Greetings, gentle viewers, and welcome to the Rewatcher's Diary. In this series, I will be looking into the Enneagram types of the characters from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. For this episode, we're looking into Xander Harris. The Enneagram type for Xander, I think, is the type 6, also known as the loyalist or the loyal skeptic. I think that he has a preference for his 7 wing, and I think that his subtype is the social subtype. Now, type 6s are part of the head triad, which is concerned with strategies, seeks security, and deals with fear. The head triad consists of the types 5, 6, and 7. If you remember, Buffy is a type 7 wing 6 sometimes, so Xander, being type 6 wing 7, has a similar vibe to Buffy because they both seek security as well as stimulation, but Xander puts a higher priority on safety. Xander always wants a solution to all the problems that the Hellmouth dishes out. "Give me an axe and show me where to point it," says he in Once More with Feeling. Now, here's how type 7s and type 6s are a little bit different. Type 7s deny their anxiousness, while type 6s are internally anxious. More often than not, Xander tends to voice his anxieties out loud, which is a very type 6 thing to do, while Buffy rarely talks about what scares her unless it's with someone she's close to. The core fear of the type 6 is fear itself, being without guidance, being alone, and being abandoned. Welcome to the Hellmouth really set the foundation for Xander's character arc. He had to kill his best friend, who was turned into a vampire. He finds himself thrust into a world that, before this, he only read about in comic books. In fear itself, Xander is rendered invisible to those he's closest to, and I think that scares Xander more than anything, that he could lose those he loves, or that he gets abandoned by those who are closest to him. The core desire of a type 6 is to have security, guidance, and support. Xander comes from a working class background, and his immediate family can be described as dysfunctional at best and neglectful at worst. So while Xander hates school, he likes having the same set of friends with him. He likes things to be certain. The core weakness of a type 6 is anxiety. His signature line is, "I laugh at the face of danger, and then I hide until it goes away." His mind always jumps to the worst case scenario, whether it be dealing with demons or with his relationship problems. The core longing of a type 6 is to hear that they are safe. Xander likes being the one that the Scoobies rely on for emotional support. He's drawn to women who make him feel safe, and I think that's why he is crushing so hard on Buffy, why he dates Cordelia, and eventually why he dates Anya, because they're all women who make him feel safe. The wounding childhood message of a type 6 is that it's not okay to trust yourself. Hell's Bells is the best example of this wounding childhood message made manifest. Xander gets a glimpse into what he thinks is his future, and he doesn't trust himself to be a good husband for Anya, in spite of the fact that they've been together for 2 years. So that's how the type 6 is at its core. This is a bit of a disclaimer, but Xander is not exactly the best example of a type 6. Prophecy Girls podcast has pointed out a very long list of problematic actions that Xander did throughout the show, and it's sad to say he hasn't been held accountable for those actions. According to the Enneagram Institute, one level of an average type 6 is described thusly. To compensate for insecurities, they become sarcastic and belligerent, blaming others for their problems, taking a tough stance towards outsiders, highly reactive and defensive, dividing people into friends and enemies, while looking for threats to their own security, authoritarian while fearful of authority, highly suspicious, yet conspiratorial, and fear instilling to silence their own fears. I feel like that really describes Xander. At his best in the series, Xander tries to create a safe and stable environment for others. His career in carpentry and construction speaks to that. But for most of the series, Xander is very adamant about who he trusts and who he doesn't trust. He hates Angel and Spike because they're vampires, but he fails to see the potential good they have. Angel has a soul, and Spike goes out of his way to help Buffy in Spike's own twisted way. But Xander never learns to fully trust either of them. Now, here's something interesting about the type 6s in particular. They're usually seen as being either phobic or counterphobic. Being phobic means that they rely on things that are safe and certain to avoid their fears. Counterphobic means a tendency to challenge and face those anxieties head on as sort of what I would call a preventative measure, like taking the thing out of the way in order to avoid the anxiety from happening. Xander is an example of a type 6 who can swing between phobic and counterphobic. Xander isn't avoidant of mundane things like Buffy is. He doesn't like doing mundane things, but he usually likes to tackle these mundane things right off the bat and get them out of the way. When it comes to fighting, Xander is usually in fight or flight mode. Xander's phobic tendencies are best summed up with this line that Anya says in Once More with Feeling. When things get rough, he just hides behind his Buffy. He constantly relies on Buffy, on Giles, and even tries to model after Riley Finn, who represents a very authoritative, hyper-masculine institution. However, Xander also shows a lot of instance of counterphobia. The best example of this is in the Zeppo. Xander goes along with Jack and Jack's friends in spite of how dangerous the situation is, and ultimately ends up saving the school from being bombed. Xander is forced to rely on himself to save the day because nobody else was around to help, and he ends up saving the day and his friends. And I feel like that's a very counterphobic thing for Xander to do. Another example would be in The Gift when he uses the construction equipment to help take down Glory. It's a very counterphobic thing. He looks for a way to take part in the action, even if it means playing a supporting role. Hey everyone, editing Monique here. I forgot to film this segment on the wings of the Type 6, and so I thought I would just film at the last minute and put it in here while I'm editing the rest of the vlog. So, the Enneagram wings of a Type 6 are the 6-wing 5 and the 6-wing 7. As Hilary McCaskey puts it, the wings for each type are like seasonings, and Type 6s basically take on the flavors from the Type 5 and the Type 7 to make their own unique personality. 6-wing 5s tend to be task-oriented and withdrawn because the Type 6 is leaning more into the Type 5's desire to keep to themselves and sustain their inner strength. I feel like Xander only acts like a 6-wing 5 when he's paranoid and insecure, which is, to be fair, a lot. But more often than not, Xander acts more like a 6-wing 7 because he uses those Type 7 optimistic tendencies to turn his fears into a joke. Xander has a lot of memorable, funny one-liners throughout the show, and he tends to joke whenever he has to deal with the monster of a week situation. It's a very 6-wing 7 thing. 6-wing 7s also have this unique out-of-the-box way of thinking that helps them solve problems, like when Xander realizes that the judge can be taken down with a rocket launcher in the episode Innocence. So, with that out of the way, on to the paths in stress, growth, and stagnation. Now for this section, I'm going to talk about how Type 6s act under stress, in stagnation, or what I call the security blanket or a blind spot, and how they act in their growth pattern. Under stress, Type 6s take on unhealthy Type 3 tendencies. Sad to say, but Xander really has a tendency to act a lot like a Type 3 when he's insecure. He acts entitled to Buffy's love, instantly gets jealous of anyone who could be a love interest for Buffy, and let's not forget, commits the ultimate sin of omission by not telling Buffy that Willow was doing the installment spell on Angel in Becoming Part 2. all of those stuff, making decisions for other people when, you know, without allowing them to decide for themselves, that is a very type 3 tendency, and it's not a good one. Now for the security blanket stagnation path, where a type 6 takes on unhealthy type 9 tendencies. This is another example of Xander's insecurities showing. Around those he's closest to, Xander can act passive aggressive and project his own fears when he's not aware of them. At worst, Xander goes into full shutdown mode like during Prophecy Girl or Hell's Bells. In growth, however, the type 6 takes on the more positive side of a type 9. While the potential for Xander's growth can be seen in the season 5 episode The Replacement with the more confident version of him, it's not until the end of season 6 in the episode Villains and the earlier episodes of season 7 that Xander starts to go more into his type 9 growth arrow, where he becomes more trusting, more flexible, and gains some sense of self-awareness. I think the best example of this is in the Buffy episode Villains, where he talks Willow down from the ledge. He is trying to defuse a very dangerous situation, and fear is the last thing on his mind. Or if it is, he doesn't really even talk about how afraid he is. It's a very type 9 thing to do, what he did in the episode Villains, and I will give Xander kudos for that moment. Now, the biggest explanation for Xander's behaviors throughout the series is his subtype, which is social. According to Enneagram Explained on Instagram, a subtype is made of an Enneagram type combined with a survival instinct. In the case of Xander, his survival instincts are rooted in his need to be secure with his group and or community. Type 6s are resourceful and they like knowing what's expected of them, at least in the context of the social subtype. This manifests in the tendency towards black and white thinking, looking for rules and structures to guide them. For Xander, all demons are evil and there aren't any morally gray areas in his mind. But he does have a tendency to make excuses for Willow's bad behaviors and justifies his own actions. Basically, again, with Xander not being the healthiest type 6, his black and white thinking can be seriously hypocritical. Other things that are traits of the social subtype 6 is that they can become a fanatic for their belief system, focusing on what they think is the right thing to do to protect themselves from catastrophe. Again, Xander's big sin of omission in Becoming Part 2, knowing what's expected of them and wanting to understand and fill their role. And I feel like Xander wants to be a certain role, but keeps getting pegged, as the Zeppo. And by that episode, he's kind of content in that area. He knows what his limits are. He tries to push them at times. Again, it's a whole unhealthy issue regarding his insecurities. But ultimately, he just stays where he is. And by season 7, I think he understands what that means. And he's at least a little more self-aware. I'm being a lot nicer to Xander, in all honesty, than some other people would be. But I'm also, being honest. So, in summation, Xander's Enneagram type is the type 6 with a preference for the 7 wing, and his subtype is social, which means that his energies are directed towards his friends and his community. The next episode for this Enneagram deep dive will be on Giles, which will probably be up sometime next week. After that, I'll be going straight into Vlogmas, where I will talk about the Enneagram types of characters from other shows, starting with Squid Game. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring that notification bell to make sure you see these videos as soon as I post them. Thank you so much for watching.